We could look at a situation and understand that on any given property, there are probably 4 exits that are applicable here. We just need to narrow down to the absolute best
So
one.
I want to touch base on the exit strategies for the sellers because most of the sellers, they're not even aware of what their exit strategies when it comes to selling their property, correct? So when a seller wants to sell their house, usually, okay, I need either to list it with an agent or I'm trying to get a cash offer from an investor, right? They don't know there are other way better solutions. It's not only listing the property and it's not only cash transaction. So let's talk about this. So
Yeah.
let's try to educate the sellers, okay? What kind of exit strategies we have, basically what we can offer to them. Because obviously we can list their property, right? Let's talk about this. We can talk about cash transaction, but there are three other ways that actually we can purchase a property and benefit the seller, correct?
Yeah, no, of course, of course. And, that's, once again, that's the beautiful thing about just investing into real estate. You can be really, really, really flexible about how you acquire an asset or how you sell an asset. It's not, you have to go through a brokerage each time. You don't have to do all that. And so obviously you have cash. Cash is always going to be the quickest, the cleanest, and the most straightforward. I mean, it's so straightforward. It's a 1-page contract, right? So it's really straightforward. Now, you're definitely not going to get the number you're looking for unless it's a dilapidated property. Then you might get the number you're looking for.
But let's talk about the cash offer. Well, we know that a lot of sellers think, a cash offer equals lowball, correct? But it's not really a lowball.
No.
Because what are the other options for the seller? Let's say they know either cash offer or list it with an agent. And like I said before, there are 3 other ways to purchase a property. But let's just focus on those 2 first. So if you as a seller, you want to sell your property. So again, if you can list your property, what does it mean? Potentially, you can get the highest offer on your property. But sellers don't really understand that if your property needs some work or it's not 2025 remodeled, one, it's gonna sit few months on the market. Second, you're gonna have to pay for commission for 2 agents, one for your agent and one and also to the buyer agent as well. Third, they're gonna have to pay 50% of the closing costs, escrow fees. But the most important, they have the uncertainty. They don't know when they're gonna sell, for how much they're gonna sell. And lastly, which agent don't talk about this, let's say they got an offer and the offer looks okay, good, they can live with this offer, right? The buyer will do inspection on the property. What happens after the inspection? They will want a huge list of repairs or concession contribution to the buyer. This contribution can be between $10,000 to $20,000, which nobody talks about
On average.
On average. And then eventually when the sellers see the final settlement, how much they're gonna walk away with, they're gonna walk away with so much less than the asking price. Now, if you compare it to the cash offer, which you can sell it within a few days if you want to, you don't need to clean, you don't need to repair, you don't need to pay any fees to any agent, you don't need to pay any closing costs, and you can actually choose the timeline. So you know exactly when you're gonna sell it, for how much you're gonna sell it. And to be honest, it's pretty much gonna be the same price, just here it's gonna be quicker, hassle-free, and you can prepare your life. Because for me, uncertainty, it can kill me. You can get into stress, you can do so many things, but I think eventually it's almost the same. So there's no lowball here.
Yeah. No, there's a few things you mentioned there. So I want to start with the agents. So do you feel like, or do you think that agents, for the most part, are setting expectations properly when it comes to a timeline. Because sellers, when I talk to them, even though they have their property listed, they still have some level of certainty that in 3 to 4 months, this is going to be sold because this is what they hear from the agent. And so, do you feel like expectations in terms of timeline are been set properly? Or do you feel like we need to have more, I guess, scrutiny when it comes to setting expectations properly for sellers?
So again, here's the problem with the agents. And again, we love agents.
We love them.
They want to get the contract signed because they work only on commission, right?
Mm.
So they will say whatever the seller wants to hear from them. Yeah, it will be sold in 3 to 4 months. But how can you guarantee this? Most of the time, the property is not renovated. It's livable condition, but it's not renovated. So in 2025, why a buyer that, you know, the interest rate is super high, right? Why would a buyer choose to buy a property that is not renovated, meaning the buyer will have to put 50, 60 to 100K into the property after closing just to renovate it? Why would somebody will buy the property that is not renovated? So agents basically, maybe they don't know, or they're just trying to hide the timeline. Because if they're gonna say to a seller, hey, we're gonna sell it in average 6 to 9 months, most likely the seller will not sign with them, right? Versus cash offer, hey, we can close in 7 days. If you're ready, we are ready. So to your question, so I don't know if they don't know this or they're trying to hide it, but they're just trying to get the contract signed.
Yeah.
Because they work only on commission. And that's what they all care about.
And look, we're not shitting on agents, guys. The reality is, agents will look at an investor while they're talking to a seller and straight up tell them that, oh, they're just going to lowball you. They're just going to lowball you. Talk to agents every day. Oh, you guys are just going to lowball us anyway. And I have to constantly tell them and remind them, well, it's not a lowball. For one, it's not a lowball relative to your pie in the sky asking. For two, we're paying 100% of as is value. This is what it's worth today. Because trust me, if we could just get a stiller deal, of course we would. But it doesn't work that way. People are not morons in today's market, especially in Vegas. Sellers are a bit educated when it comes to at least doing the first layer and like, okay, you know, and they come up with a number because people are going to take advantage of that 100%. It's human nature. Even you would, Mr. Agent. Let's just be honest.
Correct.
The difference is, or the reality is, when we come in and we give an offer, it is the most objective offer that we can give you. And this is why even when the seller or the agent gets upset at us, we're not getting upset back. I mean,
what we always say, hey, if your agents want to ask us a question, why we come up with this number, we can break it down for them and show 100%. Them why, one, it's not a low ball. Second of all, it's a fair price. And you know what? Even if our offer is 10, 20,000 below the value of this today, but we give them certainty and the convenience of working with us. Now, when I say convenience, one, again, you can close on any timeline. Second of all, how many times we can offer moving services? How many times we can offer, okay, you need to find a rental or you need to find a new property for you or a new house, and even in a different state, we're going to help you. 99% of the agents will not do this.
In the past month, we gave sellers 30 grand before closing.
Correct.
30 grand.
Again, agent cannot do this.
They can't do it.
Cannot do it. What about post-possession? We also give post-possession. Agents cannot do this.
100%. And it's really flexible in the post-possession. And if you're on the market, like you said, that's not something that will be okay with the new buyer. And they usually want it vacant even before they come and see it.
Yes.
You know, because they're a retail buyer. They're looking at this for their family.
Correct. So when you're looking at the cash offer, it's not really a lowball.
No.
The only problem is that we need to educate the sellers and we need to educate the agents as well.
If you hear, switch camera, if you hear something that you do not like in real estate, or if anybody tells you anything, remember this statement that everything that happens can be objectively justified. And so if somebody tells you something and they can't justify it, it's probably not true.
Nice statement. Okay, so let's talk about the cash offer and the listing, right? So we can list the property, which we don't like this road anyways, but we can help the sellers if they want to. Obviously, cash offer. But in nowadays, I think we should talk about the equity protection program because what did I want to say? No, so I wanted to talk to you about the equity protection program, right? Basically, I can call it's a program that
I like the way when you were in the office, I started using it when you said you bring the benefits from cash over and you have the reach of the MLS.
Correct. So let's talk about the equity protection program. Again, it's something that related only to our company. Agents cannot offer this program. Other investors, most likely, they cannot offer this program as well. So the equity protection program, basically, we give all the benefits of the cash offer, right? Which is we're buying it as is. We pay all the closing costs, no agent commissions, right? And basically, we give all the benefits. The only thing that we need from the sellers is access and time. So in a cash transaction, they know exactly when they're going to sell it, right? When they list the property on the market, they have no idea when they're going to sell it and for how much. With the equity protection program, they know exactly how much they're going to get. So they have the certainty of the price they're going to get. They have all the benefits of the cash offer, which is as is, no fees whatsoever. So they don't need to pay to agents, closing costs, and they don't need to do any repairs. So they get all our benefits of a cash. They get the certainty of the price. The only thing is different is that we don't know when it's going to be sold, but we do know because it takes
have a
3
pretty
to
good
4
range.
months.
Yeah.
Correct. Versus, again, listing it on the market, which they don't know when they're going to sell and for how much they're going to sell. And obviously, they don't have the benefits of the cash offer.
Yes.
And this is what I like a lot. And actually, we have a lot of transaction recently with our program. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, I was just sitting with a seller yesterday. They just signed with us. And these are his words. No hyperbole here. His exact words were, I really feel like this is a win-win, truly a win-win. That's exactly what he said. No hyperbole here. I said, yes, exactly.
It is a win-win.
100%. Sometimes the equity protection program is so perfect, it makes you laugh.
So actually, we can beat any cash offer. There is no cash offer that can even be close to our equity protection program.
No.
So if a seller wants to get the highest offer on their property, we can beat any cash offer.
Yeah.
And we can actually bring it very close to the listing price, but without the hassle of working with agents, without repairs, closing costs, stuff like that.
Yeah, because I don't think they realize how simple it is because it seems complex at the surface, right? And so I guess I would try to explain it like, imagine you meet a guy and you want to sell your house. You want to sell at $400,000, but your kitchen's a little outdated. Not too bad. Your house is in great shape, just a little outdated. $400,000 is the market value, the ARV, the after repair value. So that's what you're looking at. So you want to list it for $400,000, but you're a smart person. You know that it's not going to sell for $400,000. So now you're kind of stuck in your mind. So imagine you meet an investor or anyone, not even an investor. Let's say you meet a random guy and he says, you know what, man, I got a lot of connections. How about we just do this together? Oh, what do you mean? Well, you were going to list it, right? Oh yeah, I'm going to list it. Okay, wait, don't list it yet. Let me come in. We can just draw up an agreement between us both. Let me come in. Let me do renovations. It'll probably cost me $15,000. I think we can sell it for $410, $420, 100%.
Because we're gonna bring value to the property.
Exactly.
We're gonna renovate it.
Exactly.
Bring value to the property, so we can actually get a little bit higher price.
And that will guarantee you a price. Whether you guys land on $390, $400, even if he sells it for $430, you're still guaranteed that 390. And the only reason you're able to get that is because you needed to do renovations in order to capture the attention of the market. Because you touched on it earlier, it's 2025. People are being more selective than ever because you have interest rates at crazy levels, not all-time highs. We used to be at 14%, but for this generation, seems pretty crazy. So you got interest rates high. You got a lot of properties with a lack of equity. You got a lot of inventory that needs work. And so people are being ultra selective. It makes no sense to buy this property that needs work when you got this pristine property over here, probably priced 10 grand more. I'm just going to do that and ask them for concessions anyway. And they're going to do it.
Yes.
And so they're never going to buy your house. No one will. So the only way to capture the full value is to partner up with that random guy and list it on the market after the property has been brought to pristine shape, or at least some level of standard for 2025.
So basically what we're doing, we're taking a temporary control over the property, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're doing the renovation,
Mm-hmm.
and we're actually taking care of the listing process. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't need to deal with the listing, with the agents, with the showing, none of this. Correct?
Exactly. As I told the sellers yesterday, nope, I don't want you guys to do anything. You go to your new spot and you just drink some wine together. That's what they wanted to do.
That's a good one. And again, that's so important that we can also be very flexible on this as well. We can offer a down payment. We can release a down payment to the sellers as well, which again, when you list a property, nobody will release you a down payment.
No, it's unheard of.
Yes.
Literally unheard of. Other investors may look at us and say, oh, yeah, you guys are taking a lot of risk. And in a sense, we are. But
Yes.
obviously, there are always real estate. There are always ways to protect yourself, no matter what you're putting at risk.
And the risk that you were saying that you were taking, the risk is on us, but
Mhm.
we're professionals. So we know
Exactly.
what we're doing.
Exactly.
We know exactly how much we can get for this house. We know
Mhm.
exactly what renovation we need to do
Mhm.
to sell it in a certain price that we are looking for, right?
Yes. And I think beyond everything else, the most important thing in these types of transactions that aren't cash is to make sure everyone's on the same page.
Yes.
Sellers can get really confused. It's a very stressful. As an investor, you buy a lot of homes. As an agent, you list a lot of homes. As a seller, you don't do any of that. You go to work and you come home. You don't think about selling a home until you have to. So it's very, very stressful on the mind. And so the most important thing is making sure we're on the same page. And that's the biggest safeguard against risk, in
Correct.
my opinion.
So the way that I see that, okay, if you're a seller and you want to list your property, you're still going to pay mortgage on your property, right?
Yep.
You still
For
have
the duration of the listing, yeah.
Correct. You don't know, again, when you're going to sell it, for how much you're going to sell it. So you don't know your bottom line. You don't know how much you're going to walk away with. What we can offer you upfront, you're going to get X amount. It's going to be guaranteed to you. We can actually take over your mortgage payment. So while we have the temporary control of your property, we actually paying the mortgage on the seller's behalf,
Yep.
which nobody offered this service.
Yeah. And,
I think this is crazy.
It is crazy. And we have an anecdotal story on this.
Okay.
Obviously, I'm not going to say his name, but earlier in the week, we had a newer contract, and his wife lost both of her jobs. He lost one of his jobs. And so, literally, the biggest thing for them is avoiding the next monthly payment coming up at $2,500 a month.
Basically, they're avoiding foreclosure.
Exactly, because that would have
default on the
started the
payments.
pre-foreclosure process if they missed that payment.
Yes.
And so that was literally the biggest thing. There was no other reason. That's it. Because he understood, okay, if this goes south and I miss this payment, my entire life could be ruined
Correct.
from missing
Yes.
a payment. And so that was the biggest thing for him. So I just want to put an emphasis on how important it is that we're covering the monthly obligation once we go under an agreement together.
Yes. And I think even 2025, 2026, the equity protection program will break records here in Las Vegas or nationwide.
100%.
Because nobody can beat the innovation. No, sorry. Nobody can beat the equity protection offer if you compare it to a cash transaction. And even if you're going to list it on the market, you still, most of the time, you're going to get way more with the equity protection, and you're going to have the certainty so you can move on with your life. That's a big thing.
Exactly.
So let's touch a little bit. Yeah. So we talked about, again, listing the property, cash offer, equity protection program. What else do we have? What else we can offer to the sellers?
So you have what you call, this falls under the category of creative financing. And yeah, so this falls under the creative finance umbrella. And it's what you would call a subject to. And that's shortened for subject to the existing mortgage, or subject to the existing loan, depending on the asset, right?
Yes.
And I'm going to bounce this one back to you. What would you say is the biggest benefit for a sub 2 on a seller? And I guess it's case by case because it's a spectrum, right?
Well, this is a scenario where the seller doesn't have any equity, right?
Most likely, yes.
And they're probably gonna facing already foreclosure, so they are behind on their payments, and they have no equity, so they cannot really list it on the market. They cannot get a cash offer,
and they can't list it. Why? Because the property needs probably work, right?
Or if they're gonna list it, they're gonna have to come up with cash at closing because they have no equity, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with cash offer. Nobody will give them a cash offer that will cover the mortgage, payment that they have. And so the best scenario for them is sub 2, which this is a scenario that we as a company, we take over their monthly payment and the property is transferred to us. So we take all the responsibility of the payment. Basically, the property is ours, but they keep the mortgage on their name, but we obligate to make the payments. By doing so, we save them for future foreclosure, or if they're already in default, we actually continue making payments and we save their credit. We save them for different problems they might gonna have.
Now, I just spawned a new thought here. So would you say that the ideal seller for a subject to is someone with no equity? And the reason I'm asking is because with the equity protection program, as we were just previously discussing, we can create equity when there's a no equity situation.
Well, we can create equity, depends on their condition.
Right.
I mean, depends on the condition of the property.
Yeah.
I mean,
no, this is great.
You made me think.
No, I'm making a point here actually that it's truly case by case.
Yes.
We have to dig into the situation in order to truly understand. Everything exists on a spectrum. And so, yes, on paper, the ideal client is someone who they don't need to sell right away and they have a lack of equity. But there's so many things in between there that could render that deal not doable, or you could find that another strategy actually works best for that no equity, no rush situation, right?
But if they have no rush to sell, it means they are not behind on their payments, right? So they're okay.
They could be behind. And when I say rush,
so it is rush.
Well, it could be. And then let's say so sometimes people are in a rush because they want to buy another property. A lot of the times people.
So they do have a motivation to sell.
Yes.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are just going through distress. And if the arrears are taken care of, that eliminates the rush to sell. And so
But who is going to pay for it?
Exactly. So, yeah. I mean, it's just illustrating a point here. Like, it's truly a spectrum. And the best solution for the seller is to actually sit down and discuss their property in detail with someone.
But the most important that the sellers needs to know that they do have other solutions versus just list it on the market,
100%.
getting a cash offer. So there are other ways to save them from their problems.
Yeah. And that is truly uncovered through a real conversation.
Nobody really talks about it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all. When we think of as an agent or as an investor even, because, obviously we know a ton of investors, when we watch them work or when we think about work in general, we imagine getting on the phone with the seller, having a very surface conversation, providing a number. If they like the number, we move forward. If they don't, we negotiate. It's not that black and white. Sometimes it's sitting there listening for 30 minutes straight. Let them tell you everything. I need to know everything about this property. And I would encourage sellers to actually be more open with information. unless it's extremely confidential. Be more open with information, because the more information you give someone trying to purchase the property, the more, some people look at it as more ammo for them to negotiate with. But not everyone works that way. Not everyone works that way. Yes, some probably do, but not everyone does. A lot of the times, the more information you give, the more clear your situation becomes.
And more solutions we can come up with.
Exactly. More solutions comes with more clarity.
Correct.
100%.
Yes, definitely, definitely.